I'll pass the virtual baton to you.
Nice.
The torch. I like the torch better.
Well, I already messed up. Cancel the episode. We're done.
The following episode contains or may contain spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe beware.
Yeah, you sensitive people.
Get out.
No, get in. Welcome to the Phantom Zone, 3 Fans, 1 podcast in a sea of comics. I'm Noah.
I'm Kayla.
And I'm Jared, and this is my dog Loki. You can't hear him, but he's here.
Yeah, for Jared is back home for a little bit, and so he got to see, his great little German Shepherd Loki.
He's gorgeous, and also it's just I needed to acknowledge it because of. All of a sudden, you're like, why does Jared's voice go up? It's because his nose is in my crotch.
Oh, my God.
It's not just, I'm not a lunatic. That's just a thing that's happening.
Those can be two separate things. Two separate points.
No, you're correct.
So this episode has been a long time coming, mostly for Jared, because he has been talking about doing a look episode forever.
Since the beginning, actually. I think it was on the first list of 5 episodes that we were thinking of doing when starting the podcast, and it took us 2 years, a year and a half.
Totally is. Now I'm really glad that you put it that way, Kayla, because like for me, I almost have a thesis to the whole podcast, right? I think we all do in some sense, but so my thesis is that comics are more complicated than they appear. That's kind of the broadest sort of aspect, right? And that it's considered this kind of low art, right? But I think it's a relatively sophisticated thing. And what's funny, I think, this irony about doing a podcast about comic books is that comics are almost, I don't want to say completely or overwhelmingly or primarily, but they're in a big part of visual medium, right?
Yeah, I could say primarily would be a fair assessment.
Yeah, it separates it from a novel and a graphic novel.
Yes, I completely agree. But here's the irony of that is that when podcasts talk about comic books, because this is an auditory medium, we just emphasize the visuals way less. And some of it's just hard, right? Because it's hard to be and he's got green sleeves and big feet, and so you can't go into it that way. But it has occurred to me several times, when we talk about what we talk about, we could really be describing a novel 90% of the time.
We just have to trust that either the listeners will look up who we're talking about, know who we're talking about, or look on our social media, because most of the time we'll post about that.
Normally, we the most in depth we go into the artist. Art is good. Art is bad.
Absolutely right. And what I think is fascinating about that is so what we're talking about today, as Noah sort of inclined or intimated, is that we're talking about the look, the visual design of characters. But what's interesting to me about that is that that's only this maybe 10% of art in comics. It's just this one aspect. So we're just going to talk about it because art in comics is, the sort of sequence of storytelling and deciding how to do the angles and describing motion and facial expressions and all this kind of stuff. But one of the things when we were doing sort of research or just thinking through this episode that I thought was interesting is that the visual design of a character is also it's like a jazz standard. It's it's the thing that multiple artists will do. You know what I mean? So each artist has their own style. They do things very differently.
But the character has to be recognizable across all artists.
Absolutely. And it's super fun, to see, especially if you know the artist, oh my God, I wonder how John Romita Jr. is going to do Wolverine. What's his Wolverine going to look like or whatever. Yeah,
I feel too, that, we talk about comic books all the time and the characters a lot, and we talk about the writers a lot, but I don't think the artists, funny enough, from comics get enough credit. You usually do, and I feel Twitter holds people accountable more for, giving artists credit and stuff like that. That's great. But yeah, I think it's interesting, even whenever you have a comic, the first name on there is the writer. Great. I mean, they're writing the story, but if you think about it, these artists are having to create worlds for weekly or monthly comics. That's not easy
No.
at all. And then having to look through a backlog of 75 plus years of like, okay, well, we're going to be telling a story in the 70s right now, and this is how that character looked, but we're also going into 3000. So,
or can you imagine? Wait, what does the planet look like now? I mean, what does the bat? Where is the computer exactly in the bat cave? I can't mess this up.
is the penny still there, or is it gone?
It's funny too, because like you mentioned that, and I think you're kind of right that like in certain ways they don't get enough credit, right? Like that in certain ways that they're not as appreciated enough because like if a story, like we sort of think of the writer first because they're attributed to like the sort of initial creative moments, like why events happen and stuff like that. But on the other end, like they're also not generally blamed if a comic isn't going well or something like that, which I guess makes sense at some level. But a lot of times the success, like I think, for instance, good art can make a kind of not great story still really work.
It's the opposite too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's actually a good point.
I feel like most recent example of that, with the art being fantastic and then the story being like not so great, was Heroes in Crisis. People like on our Patreon, we did an episode and I believe I talked about that a little bit, especially when it was coming out.
Yeah.
I did not like that story, but the art was so good that it made me read the entire series, even though I did not like it from issue 3. So.
Well, and, it also strikes me. So, we've talked about art generally, but there's this thing, too, where I think if you're this sort of sophisticated comic fan and reader like we are, I mean, we kind of are, right? You think of like things that are most important to you about comics are often stuff that you realize sort of later, and it's you have like kind of, again, you come to a kind of interesting understanding, but you don't necessarily think about the first things that a person encountering a comic book thinks about. And that's another thing that I think is really interesting and important about like kind of character design, like the look of a character is if you're not a comic fan, or even if you are, but it's the first time you encountered a specific character, that's like your first thing is just like, what does this character look like? And it's, I think, one of the biggest determinations as to like whether you're going to pick up that.
Isn't
like,
that how
book.
Noah got into comics, right? It was the visuals on the Fantastic Four. Like he wasn't obsessed with the characters. He wasn't obsessed with the powers like Jared was. He was just like, look, pretty comic.
I mean, seeing that family and all of their blue spandex, I was like, I need to know what is going on here.
Who is this pajama beclad family?
Like, why did they choose that color? Why is there a 4 on there? Like, why is it spandex? Yeah. I mean, it's true, though.
Why is this statue following them around all the time?
Exactly. Why does he only have shorts on? Why can't he wear a shirt?
Yeah.
But I think that is interesting. And how many times have we picked up a comic or not picked up a comic because of what a character looks like?
I still do it. I mean, right. I don't talk about it as much because you can't be like, he looks so cool. It just sounds like you're an idiot, but it's very real. And the other thing I was thinking, just in this vein of like what really attracts you to something, is that I think at some level it's not totally, but a big reason that's for specifically Spider-Man's popularity. Because you think how much kids love Spider-Man, and it's not because of the dense character work.
What do you mean?
You come to grow into that. You appreciate it, but like he is just so perfectly calibrated to interest kids.
Yeah, he looks cool as shit.
He's got the ninja thing going on, the covered face.
His momentum in comics reminds me a lot of Dick Grayson's, but it's just they keep all him in very dynamic poses, and it works. So it's
and
interesting
it looks so
to watch.
good.
Yeah,
he's bouncing around all the time. That's a big part of it too. Like that's not purely just what the character looks like, but you know what I'm just saying. Like it's like he like looks like he would be agile and bouncy, and he's brightly colored, just like all these primary colors and everything like that.
As a self-proclaimed art snob, I was kind of scared to do this episode, but I've gotten to the point where I will groan if I flip through a comic and I'm like, they messed up Tim Drake's hair. So for me, it goes beyond even just the art. It goes into the design of the characters. Like if the shade of blue of Dick Grayson's eyes isn't perfect, or if, like I said, Tim Drake's hair really bothers me, I'm going to be like, this isn't good. This could be better. What is this?
Yeah.
Even if technically or other characters are drawn well, the design really, again, starts to do an impact when you're a snob like me.
Oh, Kelly, you're going to make me get all philosophical. And it strikes me interesting about that is that it does sort of pose the question, what is the design?
Yeah.
I know that's silly, but I was thinking, because when I was doing like my own kind of analysis of this, I was like, there are these sorts of like what I would describe as like hard designs and soft designs, where static designs and fluid designs, I mean, you could describe it however, but you can think about it like this, like when Superman, who I'd like put a pin in that, I want to talk about him a little bit, but Superman is like, when they changed his design just a little bit, where they like they gave him a belt or took the belt. No, they took the underwear away.
Trunks or no trunks. Yep.
That's right.
Yeah. They replaced it with the belt, right? The gold belt or something like that.
And people lost it. Well, he always had the belt, but then under the belt, he had the underwear on the outside.
It was just more distinguished between the two also. It was like they either got rid of both, or they had the belt, or just the trunks, or like they were separated too much.
Wasn't it the New 52 or something that introduced that design for him?
Yeah.
Because that's when he started getting darker. Like his personality was more snarky.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I think Jim Lee, this is almost like an independent concept too, because Jim Lee sort of made this argument. He almost did it like, I'm going to show you that it still works without this piece, right? But the point is like that people have such a strict idea about what counts as like from the spit curl to the boots, like what. But then you have these like characters who their design is like maybe just a few suggestions of a thing.
Yeah.
Like I think of, Thor is sort of easy for me to think of, where it's like, and it's weird. Like when he started out for like 30 years, he's same design. Like for a long time, and then somebody broke it open. Like I actually think the '90s did this, like where they just made all these shitty costumes that were like redesigns that were awful. But
it was the '90s,
exactly. But after they did that and be like, this is awful. But for whatever reason, that broke it open, and then like now Thor costumes change all the time, and all you really need is like the hammer, maybe some wings, blonde hair, and maybe some armor on the chest, and then that kind of just people just like it communicates
played
that.
With the colors, the length of the hair. Does he have an eye? Does he have a hand?
Yeah,
I really think if as long as you have the hammer and some giant mass of a blonde-haired man, you have Thor. Because look at Jason Aaron's run; like he didn't have clothes on half the time, and you still saw it was Thor.
And very similar, like I think of Captain America too. It's a very similar idea here. Like redesigns, we could do an episode just on redesigns, right? Just on like the interpretation of these characters and how design changes. But just in this like narrow respect, it's like for the longest time, Captain America it was a very specific. So much so when they did that crappy movie, they had to do rubber ears on the outside so he would look exactly the same. And then
so weird.
Sometime in I guess the like 2000s, somewhere in there. Right? Like it's 2006 or something. I can't remember.
I did not track Captain America's costume
I know, but it was
changes,
very just. And now it's like that guy's had more costume changes than Storm.
Yeah.
I feel like he's definitely gone more military a lot of times, especially the recent
Storm.
Yeah. She's just that character that is just going to like. For whatever reason, they've got it in her head, and I'm not against this. I think it's been lovely, but that the idea is like she's supposed to be redesigned. She was supposed to get a new costume every time. It's happened so much.
Well, I feel like anytime there's a rebirth or a new event or a new creative team or anything like that these people that make those decisions of the look of the character have a hard job to either play homage to what everybody knows or go completely new. Mm-hmm. So, I feel like with the X-Men, they've done that a lot. And especially with events, I feel like anytime they have an event, even if it's not like starting a whole new retconning thing, I feel like every time there's an event, they have different costumes.
Oh, yeah.
And then it goes back to like the weeklies or monthlies and the costumes are the same again.
Honestly,
weird.
With the X-Men, it's just funny. Like I can think of X-Men that have had like various like classic costumes and stuff like that, but for the most part, like I don't want to say they have bad costumes. It's just like they rarely have a costume that just sticks around for a long time.
Well, it's not. I feel like with the X-Men, you don't need them really to have a costume because the X-Men, you know exactly who they are with their powers. All of their powers, like if you see somebody with a dragon on her shoulder and going through walls, you know that's
for
Kitty
sure.
Pryde.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You don't need to have like a huge big getup for them.
Well, in a lot of ways, they gave up too, though. Like, it wasn't like they were like, oh, we don't need one. They tried with Shadowcat and Kitty Pryde and Sprite and whatever the fuck her name is. She said they tried many times. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, but I actually wanted to, before we kind of get over into those details, I did want to go back to Superman because I don't like the costume. I have to be honest, it's like I don't dislike it. Calm down, guys. I don't.
I like how you said it, and you're like, wait.
Well, I don't want to oversell this to suggest. That's sort of the point here, which is like, you can't really dislike this. It is the first superhero costume. And it's the well, I don't even know if it's the first. Technically not. That's probably like the Spirit or something like that.
Well, it's like the superhero. It's the first. I would say it's the first. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about the cape because that's like Edna Mode. The point she draws attention to.
No capes.
No capes.
I've go back and forth every so often liking Superman, not liking him in the comics and reading the comics, but I've always liked his costume. I can't really think of one unless he's like the blue Superman or like it's just completely out of left field in how he looks. I've liked really all of them.
Yeah,
I mean,
same.
trunks, no trunks, belt, no belt. I just think it is so iconic. Like, you would just see the silhouette and you know it's Superman. Like, I think that's how iconic that look is.
It's deeply iconic. It's also, I'll tell you this, it's like the barometer for how much you're suspending disbelief with the medium. Because the costume itself, outside of a superhero context, like if there were no superheroes and you just saw a person in that costume, that's the silliest shit that you could ever see. But in a comic book thing, it's the most amazing, like flying over a mountain, kind of like, saving the day,
It's a bird.
striking
It's a
look.
plane. No, it's Superman.
I mean, to be fair, though, like, if I saw somebody in real life wearing that, I think I'm so used to it that I'd be like, that's weird that they're wearing that. But, like, okay, I could think of a few other costumes where I'm like, this is terrifying.
You would be
Why
like,
is
no,
this
if you saw that in
working?
real life, you'd be like, this guy's a panhandler. And he's going to try to get me to take a picture with him.
If you know Wonder Man's brother, the Grim Reaper?
Oh, yeah.
Like, if somebody was dressed like that, then I would be absolutely terrified. One, because they have a giant, like, scythe for a hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that costume just looks ridiculous.
Yeah, you mean, Eric Williams, very scary. Yeah, a name drop.
It's not even scary. It just makes no sense.
well, no, but that actually, I mean, what's weird is like that costume reads other things, right? It can read like horror, villain, evil thing, but that Superman costume, and not just Superman, it's like that mold. Like I was thinking, like the cape. That's not a thing anybody else wears at all, but superheroes still wear it, and only they wear it now.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
We're going to actually kind of get into an analysis because I was thinking also, like, this is one of those things where we really cannot just talk abstractly. Eventually, we do have
Name
to...
specific examples.
It's like examples. This is how you're going to do this episode, right? I do. Before we move
Also,
on to that.
listicles are, like, easy to consume. It's easier.
That's
fun.
Right, exactly.
And we can fight.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
the best. What people really want is a cage match.
It's late, and I don't really feel like fighting, but it's fine.
That's true. We're doing this in the wee hours. That not technically, but anyway. But before we go to those examples, I did want to mention some stuff that I feel like people take for granted about why superheroes look the way they do, and it's sort of what I like to think of as like the media mechanics. Like there are things that we take for granted. So one is like, why do they look so brightly colored and garish? And I read this in an article recently doing research, and it never occurred to me that the reason they do that is so you can follow them on the page.
Oh.
Yeah, that your eye jumps from movement to movement.
We take it so for granted, because, okay, so if you think about this, when you write a novel, right, when you write in prose, the structure of the sentence lets you know who the subject is at any given time, because once you establish who the subject of the sentence is, then it's just, unless you get other cue, that's just who it is. So in other words, Dave walked down the street, then he got a tomato, then he kissed a girl, then he was shot in the head. Okay, so
Jesus Christ.
it's all about Dave the whole time, right? And it's a very sad story about a tomato girl and a murder, but
why did he get a tomato?
it's really sad.
What?
Well, you'll have to read the comic to know. But the point is, like, when you look at a comic, and people forget there's got to be a fluidity to reading it. You need to, like, effortlessly go from panel to panel, so you have the notion of motion, which isn't supposed to rhyme, but it does.
You were doing so much alliteration.
I know, it's
Notion of motion. I dig it.
There's a level of poetry, and then you're like, I think he's lost his mind. Okay. But anyway, the point is that, like, so having a character just stand out in the middle of a panel and very distinct, like Spider-Man's appearance, allows the reader to sort of just know exactly where they are. They don't have to "Where's Waldo" it when they're reading. So I just thought that was I've been reading comics for, like, I don't know, 30 years or something like
10,000 eons.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that actually makes a lot of sense.
And in group shots that you know who each individual person is.
So important.
I was about to say, like, it all makes sense until there's a giant group shot of every single Justice League member or Avengers member, and then it's like, it's one giant rainbow, and I can't tell who is who.
I can, based on their very tiny outline.
I know. Don't you feel
That's
good?
how strong the design is. That's Martian Manhunter. That's not Poison Ivy.
That's
Are you sure it's not Megan?
Oh, it could be Megan.
Well, that's the problem with the X-Men. That's why you almost can't do it. It's like, oh, there's a brunette woman. 1 of 9. But it's George Perez, by the way. Every comic he's ever done, there's just like 1,000 characters, which is fantastic. But don't you feel a little good when you're like, I know all these characters?
Yeah, I do.
I can name.
Those are the pages where I sit there and literally try to name every single one.
How do you
and
know?
then I get really frustrated when I don't know it. Because they changed the design and the look of the character.
So basically, look, I mean, I wanted to talk about character design, and, well, we all did, but I mean, like, I was drooling at the idea of this episode.
Before we get into our, like, listicles or, like, certain types of looks and stuff, I really do. It's a great word. I don't know if it's a real word, but I love that word. So with the look, if you've listened to any of our episodes before, and we've talked about this many times, the number one person or people that have either weird designs or don't make any sense outside of trying to suspend disbelief with this is females. Mm-hmm. In comics, I feel like their designs...
Also known as women.
Also known as women, yes. And as they identify as that. So, I mean, I just... The look of some of these characters, like, I feel like recently, obviously, it's gotten so much better. They've just been so bad.
There's panels flashing in my mind right now that are causing me to cringe and get a little nauseous just thinking about, like, why do you have down there? Why do you have to? Why? I just
there's a pretty famous Miss Marvel. So Carol Danvers, when she was Miss Marvel, there's one of the famous ones of her, and the unitard she has on, I guess you can call it a unitard because it has high boots up to her thighs and then gloves, but the thong part is so tiny that you literally see spaces in between her legs, like her legs and to where her genitals are. Yep. It is ridiculous. There's no way.
The thing is that it's almost this cliche, this expression when people talk about the male gaze. The problem is that in comic books, it just, especially up until recently, just slaps you in the face. It's just so gratuitous. And it's not like this is a heavy concept. It's pretty straightforward. But I think the thing to remember about it is, like, was this character designed for a person to project themselves into as a hero, or was this person designed to be like the object of somebody's, like, sexualization or objectification and stuff like that?
Yeah,
that
I was going to say, they're often designed like sex dolls where the proportions make no sense. You could say that about the men too sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
The poses that they're drawn in is an aspect of art. My favorite counter argument or, like, counter movement to the male gaze recently has been artists drawing men in traditionally female poses and how obvious that makes it.
Yeah.
For people that are kind of missing the point, going like, no, they draw men like that too. Not all men have biceps the size of baseballs or basketballs. I'm sorry. Baseballs are a very tiny ball. I do know sports.
She's like a pool ball.
But yeah, just those arguments, it just makes it really obvious when artists start drawing traditionally male characters and female.
I mean, as somebody that identifies as a homosexual male, I don't mind some of these poses that they're doing men in now, but it is true. I think that with them purposely doing that, it's making people see it. I mean, of course, you have those dude bros that don't care, and they're like, "Why are you taking away my females?"
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who talks like that, but
yeah,
you introduced this as female.
I was like, for some reason, I was like, the characters that identify as females, I'm like, well, they don't. It doesn't make any sense.
You were like, what's the more clinical way to say this? And you ended up with female.
Yeah, women. Yeah. I was trying to be nice. I don't know.
You're doing your very best.
Fantastic, Noah.
Okay, well, let's get into our list.
Well, but I did want to say, just to underscore that point, I mean, the fact is that that's why it's more insidious when it's part of the character design. Because it's sort of like you can change the poses as we're seeing them do in some satirical way or whatever. But it's like when you make their parody, like their design, like it inherently kind of, subject to the male gaze objectifying. It's like Power Girl is a great example of that.
You mean the boob window?
The boob window, where it's like, where you've now imprinted that idea that that's how she's supposed to look. And so when you try to change it, they act like...
You've taken something away from them. Where are the titties?
I can't see them. So I don't know who wrote it, but with Power Girl, somebody like explained in the comic that like to make it like okay that she still has a boob window. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, like these are part of me. They were like, yeah, it was supposed to be, a sigil on there, but she felt like she couldn't live up to it or whatever, so she just didn't put one on. And like that made her. But it was like, okay, but you've been around
cleavage.
For years.
That's
right. But it's like you've been around for years. Like we know who you are now. Like you can cover those up. Like stop drawing her that way.
And Captain Marvel, like you mentioned her earlier, I think she's the best example of the kind of reclamation project. Mm-hmm. Where if you look at a costume now, it makes so much sense for who the character is. It's way more empowered. And I don't mean that as like a slogan-y kind of thing. Like literally, this is how a person would dress, assuming they were going to go into a fight.
Yeah.
And outer space, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, she went from bikini bottoms to actual pants. So
it looks like a kind of modified like flight suit or something.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Great. Well, we're done. Okay, so now on to the listicles. So we broke these up into different types of costumes that we think fits those categories. We're not saying these are the definitive ones. These are literally ones that we like within those categories.
Yeah, it's like these are aspects of what we think a strong character design is going to have.
Yeah,
the categories, and we're just going to sort of pick what we think is a good emblematic kind of character for that sort of category.
So the first one is the striking and dynamic. So, most people like comics or draw their attention to the comics for the person on the cover or the page, or they saw a costume you really liked. It grabbed your attention. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Which ones are so striking and dynamic? What did you pick?
Yeah. So I picked Poison Ivy because every time she's on a page, I gasp a little bit, especially because Poison Ivy's design, I'm specifically talking about the one where she has green tinged skin with ivy all over the place. And she has she always has the flaming red hair. Green and red are complementary colors on the coloring wheel. There's your lesson in art for today.
The art snob said so.
Yeah, exactly. So when the bright green and the bright red are together, it really just does make a striking image. And that's why I chose Poison Ivy. And again, a lot of their designs recently, they go back and forth between having her have the green skin and having her have the regular human-like skin. And I'm like, wow, you had something so good.
I love this pick. Mm-hmm. Mostly because I can't think of a design I don't like.
for her.
Yeah, with the costume. Like, sometimes people will draw her a little funky.
Yeah.
But the costume looks great. And I even like the one where she had the black underneath and she had the green on top. Still looked fantastic.
We have a doc that we were like looking at the episode, so we all know what everybody's picks are. And this was one of the first times where I just like every pick.
Aw.
Right.
You know, I was just like, they're all, so I was going to say, because so much of this category for me is the idea of like, you know, where is your eye going to fall on the page?
Yeah.
If there's a bunch of characters, because you think, I mean, like, there's so many characters out there now. If you create a character to stand out, like, it really, you know, in a sea of comics, you know, like, how
oh my God. It finally made sense.
This is the place. Who's going to stand out? And she absolutely does. That red hair is just so
especially
good.
Not to mention, so she's part of the Batman's Rogues Gallery, and if she's up with all of the Batmen and women and Catwoman, she's going to stand out. Everybody else is wearing black pretty much.
Hey, look, this is so dumb, but I just love what it says, because it's like, she's a plant, but she's got red hair, so she's bad. You know what I mean? Like,
she's poisonous.
Yeah, I just love So my pick is, I stole this from Noah's mind, I think.
Oh.
It is true. I just knew he loved this character. That's not why I picked it, but it's definitely...
so you took my pick.
When I picked Nightcrawler for this category, because I also remember, like, the X-Men, I think, as you mentioned, sometimes it was like, especially all the ones that came from the giant-size X-Men, like Wolverine and Colossus and everything like that, it wasn't so much like they have specific costumes, but their appearances generally all stuck out, and it was just like this... I don't know, like so many different shapes and silhouettes and everything like that. And Nightcrawler specifically, I very much remember seeing that character, and this is the barometer for me, is I wanted to know more.
Right.
Like, what is going on with this? Never seen anything like it in any sort of character. I mean, like, if you don't have a sense of him, and I'm not going to describe every one of them, but it's just like, it was sort of like, he's so well done, because it's like this dark, demonic character, obviously, but you can tell he's not evil. Exactly. He doesn't look like a bad guy exactly. A lot of that's probably just like how he's designed, and the two crazy fingers with one thumb on each. I just think it's absolutely
the tail.
captivating.
That's what gets me.
Yeah. I want to write a story about that character when I see that character.
Yeah, he was one of the first X-Men that I saw on a cover. I remember, and I was very confused, because I was, you know, it's like, is it a demon? Is it an alien? Like, what is going on?
No. It was like, why do I have feelings for this demon?
Also happened after I read that comic, and still to this day, that is my Man Crush Monday every Monday.
I get it.
Great pick. Not because I would have picked it, but whatever. So my pick is a lot like Kayla's now that I'm realizing. So I picked Starfire. You got that green and orange right there, but she's mostly orange. And the reason why I picked her is because, you know, she typically looks normal-ish. She looks like a humanoid, but the hair is so iconic that I just couldn't. It was so striking. I remember reading her in Teen Titans, and it's just gigantic.
Yep.
And then it's on fire.
Yep.
Like, what?
You should listen to the Patreon top 5 redheads. I chose her as my number one because she is dominating the redhead category.
she's hard to beat. And incidentally, little preview for later, I also picked a character with fire hair that's going to be on my list. No, don't tell anybody. But I totally get it. And it is true. Like, it's also something that kind of looks better in comic books in a way. I've seen animated versions of this, and it's okay. But like something about the page and your imagination, it just
the gradient that they do for her hair now currently is so cool.
Yeah, I particularly when we were doing this, I put the picture of her from Justice League Odyssey, and I like that because, you know, I like the character, and I like that, you know, she's kind of become, you know, a sexual like icon in a way that she empowers from that. Like, it's not like all these men are doing it to her. It's like she owns that. But I like that now that she's a little more, what am I trying to say? Her costume seems more of a costume now than it did
just,
prior.
Like pasties.
Yeah, instead of just pasties. And I like that. And her hair design is so cool. I like the very long, you know, trailing behind her hair.
And I gotta say, like, from a design standpoint also, it's really cool that they made this character that's an alien, and her look very much says alien, but without doing stereotypical alien tropes.
Yeah.
Like a helmet and then antennas.
Exactly, or just, I don't know, like Klingon-y looking, a reptilian. I don't know, I just think it looks very original.
All right. So next one that we picked, costumes and looks for is the iconic category.
This one was hard.
It was extremely hard. So it's mostly the characters that represent or invoke larger concepts. So the ones that, good, evil, courage, compromise, all of that stuff. So you can see that directly from the look.
I had to look up what the word meant. I know that's dumb, but it's like one of those
iconic
words that's so general, and you have a feeling, but like to actually, like, what's the technical definition? And real quick, it's a person or thing regarded as a representational symbol or as worthy of veneration. And I was like, you mean all of the comic book characters?
Yeah, that's why it was hard. So when you look at my choice, it's going to be like, was it hard for you, Kayla? Was it really? Because I chose Batman.
But you almost have to go there.
Right? I mean, it's iconic. Just the shape of the cape with its jagged edges. It's literally iconic because everything he names is a battering or a Batmobile, and then there's the bat signal. I mean,
bat cape.
Yeah. But the reason I chose Batman wasn't just the bat part of it. When it's in motion, when you see it on the page, I love it. It's like he's cloaked in shadow. Like, I don't know if he brings his own darkness with him wherever he goes detectiving, but he can just be standing in the corner of the room. You won't see him. It won't make sense because he's 6 foot something wearing this gigantic suit, and you still won't see him. But the way some artists draw the cape, it's like he's cloaked in darkness moving that way.
You probably said one of my favorite sentences that I've heard this year so far. I know we're only like
it's like the 4th day, so
4 days
not
in.
Really impressed.
Okay, in the last year. I'll give you more credit. I don't know if he brings his own darkness with him when he goes detectiving.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in that sense. It's very true. And actually, when you said that, it made me think, like, yeah, it's almost like bats are incidental to Batman in a weird way, because it's like way more like he's like these like attacking shadows come to life than it is like a real bat motif, but it's just amazing.
But he's also not only just for him or like what he symbolizes, but he literally is, aside from Superman, I would say the icon for comics almost. I would say there's like 4 characters that are like that, and he is definitely one of them. Like, everybody knows Batman.
It's if the Superman look is the paradigm, Batman is almost like the shadow of that paradigm because of like the shadow. Yeah, that's almost a bad, like a shitty title. It's like the shadow of the paradigm. Like they are running out of Batman
coming
titles.
2022.
Yeah, exactly. Mine was I was trying to think of like I actually think this character, it feels sort of weirdly referential and distills down, and I just picked Shazam. Because a lot of the stuff going on there almost seems like, again, this someone sounds like bad, but like he's a bit derivative of Superman, right? He's got the cape and the kind of like big sort of like leotard sort of thing with a symbol on the chest and dark hair. But it was like all of the like the lightning just implies like the mythological connection. So it's like there's a worshipful aspect to it, and it to me is this part that like also connects comic books to mythology that I really like. And so I don't know, that look to me just perfect. It's sort of, I hate to say, I think it's a perfecting of the Superman look, to be honest. Like yeah, I know, and I'm not saying that's bad. It's just it's just a slightly developed design.
Do you think that you're just bored of Superman? Like, do you think you've just like seen him too much? Because I almost picked Shazam for the previous category, and then I saw that you picked him. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to have Shazam in 2 categories.
Yeah, makes
but
sense.
I mean, I think it is a level up from the stereotypical superhero costumes, because not only the colors are a little different from normal, but like how he wears his cape and how it's a quarter cape.
It's all weird.
Like what?
those are these compositional elements too. Like that's that we're going to talk about it later, but like at some level you can't avoid that. That like sometimes stuff just looks good from a compositional place, and that's a good example of that. And also, I mean, like Superman stuff, it's boring or there's boredom. It's not boring; it's that it's been overdone and you get bored with it. But also, like it was designed with very like when they only had
limited
3 colors and like the art was lower, and so you extrapolate that out and they try their best to like update it, but some things are a little bit more open to update. But again, just for this category in terms of iconic looking, just instantly says that the fact that it invokes like kind of like the mythology and the superhero stuff, I mean, I think it's just extra in that thing. It's like that's what they were going for in a very conscientious way with Shazam for me.
I love that they gave him a hood. I'm like, yes, get more into that wizard look.
You and your magicians.
He looks like Assassin's Creed in that.
But bigger and cooler.
Yes.
My pick is Aquaman. And specifically
the
like
scales.
New 52 current. Like I feel like his older looks they did, but he was shirtless most of the time, so it was kind of weird to say he has an iconic look. But I feel like with the orange scales and then the green on the rest of it, those colors themselves on a superhero costume, you do not see often. But then adding the scales on there, having the trident, having the fin on his, on his hands and feet also, I think all of that just resembles more of who he is as a character.
I really do like the scales. I think that was like a big step up for his costume design.
Mm-hmm. And it's like he's a fish guy. Put some scales on him.
When I really think that the picture that you can't see, obviously, the listener, but like that Noah included in the doc, I think really brings
him murdering Hal Jordan.
Well, that's true. But it's one that you can see that they really brought out the regal aspect of Aquaman and leaned on that, because I think if you listen to our Aquaman deep dive way back in the day, you'll remember he didn't always have that emphasis in his character. Sometimes he was just like this like free floating superhero in the wilds of the oceans. But lately, and it's like they've really more, again, kind of underscored and emphasized his regality, and I think that really plays up for the iconicness. Like, I think
he's also, he's the king of Atlantis. Mm-hmm. So make his armor or his costume look like it's expensive.
Yeah.
Also make
absolutely.
it shiny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on, it's always in the water. It's going to get polished. Like, whatever. All right, so the next category is intelligibility. So this is more successful character designs that immediately tell us something about the character at hand. So you can really just tell right off the bat with everything from their costume to the way that they look as a person and or alien and or demon that you can tell kind of what they're about.
Yeah, I thought about this specifically in terms of like it's similar to that idea of like it's got to be eye catching, but not just that you're attracted to it. That like I was thinking about like the comic book shelf, right? When you go to the comic store and there's all these sort of things, and you really to pick up that sort of thing, you want to know what the comic's about before, and usually the main character is on the cover.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I always think a good design has a kind of quality where it's like it communicates something to you more than just like, I like the color blue or whatever,
Yeah, what a handsome man. So I have to laugh because me and Jared went in the same direction with this.
I love this.
Okay, so I chose Daredevil for this. Most of the time, I feel like you could learn a lot just by looking at his character design on the cover or just in motion. Any of the panels he's in, really. You glean quite a bit. Obviously, he has the little horns, so Daredevil. He's often in like a really graceful, dynamic, like gymnast pose. So you kind of get a sense of like there's some ninja training there. He's kind of graceful. He's like an acrobat.
Which we haven't gone into that much, by the way, but that is a great point that like also just sort of like almost like the pose is as much a part of the design of the character.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes it's more noticeable with certain characters than others. Like you'll get it more with Spider-Man than, let's say, Cyclops necessarily.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's smart character design, though. Like when somebody's fleshing out a character, it's like, how do they stand? How do they talk?
One of my
how do
favorite
they
parts
interact?
of Daredevil comics is watching his fight scenes with his weapons. So, I just really like the Daredevil's design, and obviously the religious connotations actually are important.
That's so good, because even if you didn't get that it's religious, you kind of know he's the hero and that he's a devil.
Yeah, there's some inherent conflict there, built-in angst in that character design.
And it's based, you said this in the doc, kind of, or implied it, that like it's based on clever wordplay, like subtle wordplay. Mm-hmm. Which he's a daredevil, get it? But it doesn't feel like smarmy. There's not so you get it? I think it's fantastic.
I also like that. I mean, aside from that red, I don't even know what like actual red that is. That's like true red that his costume is, mm-hmm. or maroon sometimes. Mm-hmm. But how his eyes, he could easily just cover them up. Yeah. He doesn't need to have anything there. But it's smart that one, he has eye holes, mm-hmm. but it's the same color as his costume, but also, resembles the glasses that he has. Yeah. So, it's just so smart.
Very cool. Yes. And Kayla intimated that we had a very similar look. We did this blind, really. So we didn't know what the other people picked. You could look, but that's just not how we went about it, right? Yeah. And I picked Hellboy I just can't, the odds that we would get that close, but they don't look anything alike, right? They have the devil motif for sure.
They sound like a duo.
They really do.
Devil and Hellboy.
I know, and oddly enough, Hellboy is the sidekick.
Yeah.
Even though he's hulking and big.
But he kind of would be, though.
Totally. But what's weird about it is that it was more about, like, for me, not so much the devil part. It was all the accoutrement.
Mm-hmm.
Like his hand? Yeah,
well, like what he's wearing.
So, the gigantic coat.
Exactly, mm-hmm. And that's that's to me what tells the story, because this is this monster character, but like he looks like a detective. I mean, he's not exactly a detective, but it very much communicates.
He has that trench coat.
That's what I'm saying. He's trench coat. It has the big gun. Like you get you already understand. There's going to be this weird contrast between his monstrous nature and the fact that he's got a very conventional like cop-like look to him, like a beat detective or something like that. I just think it's smart as shit. Mike Mignola is not dumb.
Yeah, I mean, it's super smart, because normally when you see, a demon-like character, take Etrigan, the demon, mm-hmm. he looks like a demon, and he typically has a sword or something like that. So like they usually have like medieval weapons or some type of magic or whatever, but he just kind of looks like a sad little demon boy with a big gun.
And Hellboy's
it's like, what's going on?
Is always like making this face like, God damn it, did I step in bubblegum? I hate bubblegum on my hoof. Or whatever. It just has that it's just really smart.
So my pick is in the complete opposite direction as these two.
Angel! No, I'm sorry.
No.
Technically.
I went with Captain Cold.
The Eskimo.
I'm into it.
The blue to their red.
Yeah.
I think this character, like, immediately mm-hmm. he has to do with something cold.
Yes.
But it's so interesting to me. And part of the reasons why I was drawn to the Flash comics in the first place is all of his villains make absolutely no sense except for Reverse Flash and Zoom, because you have this, bright red character typically running on water or running through a city. And then you have this dude that looks like he's supposed to be in the Arctic.
Yep.
Just robbing a bank.
Yep.
It's so weird to me, but it works. I think it's like the only character that could be like, I'm literally dressed for snow, and it works.
You think he'd get hot all of the time?
You would think so, but it doesn't really matter for him.
I think with Cold, the thing that I love about it, what it really exemplifies is you get it.
Right.
You look at it and you get it. And I like that don't get me wrong. I mean, like, there's still mystery. Like, there's a balance here. Like I said, with the sort of Nightcrawler thing before, it's like, you don't know the whole story. You want to know more. But you, with these characters like that communicate something, it's like you don't want it to be like muddled or vague entirely. Like, there are like characters like that are sometimes just like in a blue, like, I don't know, jumpsuit of some sort. And you have to read 3 issues before you have a sense about what they're about. You look at Snart with the gun and the parka and the glasses, and you're like, okay, I know what this is about.
I love his glasses. So the original.
Why is the hole so tiny?
Mm-hmm. Because he's focusing in. He needs to aim right with his freeze guns.
That's right.
But I think it's even down to his glasses. It's a good point that they're just so different. And it's like, why is it like that? Because I think the only other character that I can think of that has that is a mole man.
Yeah,
Right?
Mole Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has
yeah.
like those tiny little holes,
Slits.
like in his
Yeah, it's
So that's-
you want it to be like distinct but you don't want it to just be random.
Right.
Like it's about something. It's great. It's a great pick. Yes.
I wonder what came first, the costume or the powers, or the like ability set. Curious.
I would guess it's like I want to freeze stuff.
Let's
And
make
then they were like, "What's he look
make
like?"
an Eskimo.
Yeah, what does he look like? Give him a parka. All right, so next one, and I think this is a super interesting category because it took me a while to think about who I wanted, but I love who we all picked
This
because
is
they all go
hilarious.
hand in hand.
This is hilarious.
Again, I want to emphasize that we did not plan this.
So this one is simplicity or minimalism. So literally just limit, like, just not all the bells and whistles, not all the stuff coming off of them, but such simple designs, but just work for the character, and that you don't really want them to change it.
And a minor note here too, because this is an opportunity to talk about the mechanism of the comic medium. Remember, they have to reproduce these characters so much. Mm-hmm. And that, so it's not, I mean, minimalism is great, but like, even if it wasn't a preference, it would have been a necessity, especially early on, because it's like, they can't draw every like feather on, they have to like scale it down. So,
Yeah, but we're also not talking about like when they gave Superman jeans and a t-shirt with the Superman symbol. Like, we're not talking about like simple that way.
Superboy's
Yeah,
costume
that's true.
with the t-shirt with the
Yeah.
So I chose Silver Surfer. He's a naked silver man with a
It's perfect.
silver surfboard, and that's it. That's his design.
One color. One color.
Okay, I always have liked this design, and I say always because it reminds me, and probably Silver Surfer came first, but it reminds me of Dr. Manhattan, and I like that design too. There's just something ominous and ethereal about this like monocolored outline of just So I chose Silver Surfer,
And no
because-
pupils
just-
with either of them.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. No pupils, bald.
it was like when we came up with the category, it was like, you're like, I'm going to get the most.
Yeah,
Of it.
I'm like,
He is the most.
Try beating me in simplicity perfection. Because
When I say put that too, the other thing I thought was like, what was crazy is like, we never really saw Silver Surfer as silver in a weird way, except for a few exceptions, but like, you're just imagining it.
yeah.
Because like they depict him as light gray in the comic, and then that crappy Fantastic Four sequel came out, and I have to admit that one of the coolest parts was actually getting CC Silver Surfer live action and silver,
Yeah.
like reflective, like it was
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, especially when he was first in comics, it was like space, and then he was the not black
Yeah.
on the panel. Like, they just didn't, color him in really. So yeah, I mean, it's super cool. I love that character so much.
I don't know why Kayla and I kept doing things that were very similar but very different at the same time.
We had the
'Cause mine
same brain on this one.
is also a very silver character in a sense. I picked Doctor Doom, and you're going to notice. a
I'm
pattern
actually
here.
very curious about this because I don't feel like it's simple. But I want to know. I'm curious on why you picked.
Because, well, sort of, it's now become, it's a good example of how they can make a thing more, I kept using the word baroque or like ornate or complicated. But if you won't look at the 1960s, the basic concept of this thing, it's a suit of armor, including the mask, but that's just part of the suit of armor, and a green cloak. And that's your Doctor Doom, really. And he's as complicated, really, more as the art style of the artist, more than the design itself. So, like in Secret Wars, he's a major part of it. There, I can't remember the artist, but it's in that sort of like like late 70s period, and he's basically, again, their depiction of a suit of armor and the green cloak or whatever.
Is the cloak separate pieces, or is it held together with the belt?
That is a really good.
It looks like it's like
a
a big romper with a hood and a cape.
I
That's
like
a
the
really good
idea
point.
that this is a simple design that is like, it can change depending on the artist, but you still recognize the character. I really like that.
Noah's right too to point out there is actually a tunic going on as well. Like there's a tunic
it's
and
still
a
part
thing.
of the gigantic cloak, we think.
Yeah. Yes.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, it's like all the same. It's just be funny to see him like go through his closet and it's just one giant piece.
I mean, it'd be hard
and he
to
puts
put
the
it
belt
on because you, in theory, you have to put on the armor first, and then you have to deal with the fabric on top of that.
But the other thing that I thought about this category, which I find really interesting, is it's the idea of like, you get down to this level where it just works and you can't explain it because it's already down to the most basic part of it. And it's like, I don't know how just a really like a knight's suit of armor and a green hood and cape turn him into, and he's still like, when they have Doctor Doom now, he is no more complicated than that, and it just works as a design, especially as a villain design.
Well, I think what goes into that is a good character.
Yes.
Because if you look at Steppenwolf, and more recently, he looks ridiculous, but he's not really written well, so he's seen as not really that great.
No question.
But it's like if Doctor Doom looked like him and he had all the same stories, he'd have a great design.
And it's almost, that's a great point too, because it's almost like this, like it sort of just gets out of the way. It's like just enough of a good design that because you have this like workable story that's really good, interesting character, it doesn't like distract from it.
Yeah, it's like, we need a new villain for the Fantastic Four. Let's just put Iron Man in a green cloak. And then call it a
basically.
day.
Yeah. It's very true. It would be great if Iron Man was like, and I'm going to have my Doomstopper armor. And it's just, he puts his armor in a green cloak.
So my pick is a Fantastic Four. All of these characters have something to do with each other.
That's weird.
But I mean, I picked them kind of for the reasons that I said up top, but it's just so simple. You have a literal family that was like, you know what, we're going to Hanson this and we're going to all wear the same outfits because they all need to know that we're on the same team and put giant fours on our chest. Because
there's four of us.
Exactly. But it doesn't come in handy when you're like trying to get the element of surprise and say you like sneak up on them and you're like, I have backup. And it's like, there's four of you here. And they're like, no, the's more. It's like, you literally have a four on your costume.
It also just works so goddamn well for the story.
I think part of the reason why I think it works so well is because their powers go so well with the costume and the color blue that like, you know, Invisible Woman, when she's going in and out of being invisible with the force fields, having that blue on there is just so cool.
But they're astronauts at some level, right? So it's sort of like those things look so much like kind of like an astronaut's like, you know, not
suit.
Yeah, I don't even know what to call it. It's not a uniform exactly, but like their utility thing or whatever. And it so happens that it's just depicted well enough and just translates to a superhero thing. You know, I think you're absolutely right. And I also just like the idea it's just a blue, like full body suit with a 4 on it or a pair of underwear. Which is so dumb that he doesn't wear more clothes.
I love
you just
that
said
it's
that
all
earlier,
in the
but
Fantastic Four universe.
I know.
So next one, originality and uniqueness and nerve. Sorry, that was a RuPaul reference.
So true.
So this one, it's exactly how this part of the list sounds. It's the ones that are super original, that is distinguished from everybody else. It can have callbacks, but they're just so different from anything else that you've seen on the page.
By the way, it should be nerdv. Sorry.
I could see that you're waiting to say something, and I'm glad that you patiently waited.
Okay.
I like how it tasted.
The payoff.
I took a completely different direction in this category than the other two, and now I'm a little nervous that I'm going to be judged for it.
You should be.
But hear me out. I chose Rorschach. Because
no, I'm totally on this. Like, I think you're absolutely right.
Moves, guys.
Yes.
His face changes all the time.
I want to take his face off.
Oh, I know. He has like a trench coat and a hat, and that's not so unique. But his face, guys. His mask.
But it works, though. It works so much, and it's so different from anything else that you've seen.
Exactly.
That's absolutely right.
I can't think of another character that,
And these traits, by the way, I think most good designs have a few of them, if not all of them. So you could also, Rorschach, that's a very minimal concept, too.
Yeah.
And I think it absolutely works. But no, you're absolutely right. And what's crazy is, like, when we all read Watchmen for the first time, I think there was like, how did they never do that before?
Yeah.
That's fucking genius.
Yeah.
Right.
And it fits the concept, too, because changing ink blots. I mean, like, it's absolutely right.
Super cool. I mean, I love a good trench coat.
I love seeing that in the movie too.
Yeah, me too.
It's totally unique. Don't even. It's unique. The character itself, the design of it is definitely unique,
Yeah.
I think.
Okay, well, if I was going to do another category, my unique character would have fit into that, but there aren't enough. But I was like, bananas. Just bananas. Because sometimes, like 90% of the time, banana stuff doesn't work, but sometimes it's just like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? A firestorm. That's who I picked. And I remember being a kid, and there were these DC action figures, like just from, I don't know what it was even from, just from like old Justice League. So if they just adapted them or whatever. And if you've never seen Firestorm, he's like a normal guy with a blouse, very billowy blouse, and he always has like an atom symbol, and then his hair's on fire.
Yep.
And he kind of has like a lot of, like, it looks like paint around his eyes or something like that.
His costume, I mean, it is definitely unique and original, but it makes absolutely no sense
None
because
at
you
all.
have 4 different eras on there. You have like pirate, you have spandex, you have weird armor from space with the shoulder pads that go up to his face. Like, it's so odd. Like,
Part of me almost is like, because there's a lot of ways to approach uniqueness and originality. I mean, one, it didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. And also just that, like, the kind of like, it just worked for me at a very like, I love that, but no idea why. And I just like, just think he's an incredibly unique character.
all right, mine, I picked Kamala Khan. And one of the bigger reasons why I picked it is that I think it was so unique to not only emulate the character that she loves when she became a superhero, but also play homage to her religion. I think is so freaking cool, and it all works so well. It's so cool. I love it so much. I love that she has a sash, but it's a scarf. I love that she still has a little mask on. I feel like it's really playing homage to the first, Miss Marvel costume.
Yeah.
It's a very smart design too. It's like all these considerations went into it. And then I know this is what you weren't going for this necessarily, but just in terms of originality from the angle of like, we haven't had very many conspicuous sort of Middle Eastern characters.
Exactly.
So it's just real cool that it's just unapologetically that. So in some sense, it's original in that way too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Super cool colors. Bring back that old Miss Marvel colors and costumes. All right. So last but not least, and I like this one a lot, it's the aesthetically pleasing one. So it's pretty much everything from shape, proportion, color, composition, everything from top to bottom is just chef's kiss.
And you, like, we were talking about all these comic book specific stuff, and it's like, it's like the same thing with story. We talk about story. It's like, what do I like about comics? Like, and Kayla will be the first one to tell you. It's like, it also has to work like all stories have to work.
Yeah.
And in a similar way, it's like, it also just has to look good from a color, composition, balance kind of thing.
There's pictures in this comic book. I don't want to have to look at all of these pictures and think gross, ugly.
Yeah.
The whole
Absolutely.
time. So make it pretty. Make it aesthetically pleasing.
Any comic book
chose
Rob Liefeld has drawn.
Zatanna.
Sorry.
I know Noah would be so pleased with this pick. But every time I see her, I'm like, she's so stunning. 10 out of 10. I wish I could wear that, babe. I want to wear the fishnet stockings with the cool shirt and the top hat. I just think her design it's like it should not work because it's cheesy, because she's a magician and she's dressed like a stage magician, but it's amazing.
I feel like she could have fit into like almost every category that we have. It's simple. It works. It's super unique.
That's right.
It's so good. It's standout.
She brings a lot of fun too, and not just not just her character and her facial expression, but that also, that's what that look says to me too. That, like this, that there's going to be an element of levity or like whimsy to the story, and that's really cool, and that makes me happy. So that's aesthetically pleasing.
Exactly.
It's also super cool that most of the time when you see magicians wearing that, so like the top hat and the tux, essentially, it's always male.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see a female do that and have her interpretation of it. She hasn't really changed much in her look. Recently she has, and it's still really cool. Like they still kept the fishnets, but it's like on her arms.
Yeah.
So I love when they play with that kind of design.
Yeah.
I love this pick.
I knew you would.
So I don't think you guys are going to hate my pick, but it's definitely like most of what we've named have been very iconic characters, very standout. And the character, this is almost more biographical, not because I used to be this character, obviously, unfortunately, but because I picked Nightcrawler. I picked the wrong name for the character that I picked. I picked Night Thrasher for this character.
When I saw this, I was like, what?
Yeah, I know. It's because I think that everything about it works, but I'll admit it's not as if like it's originary in this sense. But like for me, especially the original design by Mark Bagley, like it's the sort of like sleek, like ninja looking sort of silhouette if you've never seen, but like it's like kind of more armor. And I love the way it uses a very minimalist design, but then accent pieces with bright colors. So he's got what do you call it, like a dark kind of, again, like kind of battle suit, and then just the face is red, and he usually has like maybe like a sash or like a belt that's red, and I just think it works so well, and especially for what it was, because this was for him on the cover of New Warriors number 18, like with this like knife that came out of his gauntlet, was the first comic that I ever bought. And I almost feel like if that character didn't strike out to me like, that's so badass at 9, I might not have read comics.
Aw, so it was a nostalgic pick.
Mm-hmm. And also you can see through his eyes that he's a black man, and I think that's also a pretty powerful kind of look. I don't know. It's just cool.
Nice. I like that one. I don't think my pick is cheating, but I picked it anyway. So I picked 2, and I mostly picked them because they're really a duo now. They have been for like the last 10 years or so. You don't usually see them separate. I picked Big Barda and Mr. Miracle, Scott Free. And I picked them because I feel like, one, Big Barda is just super, like, when you see her, you're like, what is going on here? Why do I love it? Like, is she a mummy? Is she like
a samurai?
Right. But it's just so cool. Like the design of it, how she has like, sometimes she'll have like a metal skirt instead of just the pants, and it still works for that character. Then you have Scott Free, her husband, the complete opposite in look, with most of it spandex, but then you have the accents of green, you have the red and the yellow. It's just, all of it works so well together that I'm pretty sure they're one of my favorite designed characters. I really have not liked them ever.
To me, this is superhero shit on steroids.
I was gonna say there's a lot going on just in the picture that you posted for us to look at. Lots of colors going on.
It's so true. This is maybe the perfect pick because, I mean, like I picked something that was just like very personal, but just seriously, because I think that the whole idea is like, oh, there's something special about comics. They do something that, there's at least that there are parts of them you're not going to see anywhere else. That design you would only see in a comic. And it reminds me of that Doctor Strange movie where the idea is like, we're going to do magic, and then magic happens. He's like, I am fucking tripping my balls off right now.
I didn't know you meant that magic.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing. It's like superheroes can have crazy designs, and you see Mr. Miracle's design, and it's like, bam! It's like in the 5th dimension. It's so
like
good.
If you haven't already, you should read Tom King's Mr. Miracle, because I feel like, or even Darkseid War, that led into Rebirth, I feel like it really shows these characters like top-notch designs and how well it works for them. They're also new gods, so they're essentially like alien gods, and I feel like that comes through in their costume. So it's just, all of it works for me. I love it so much.
It's also, what a great place to sort of end on like one of Jack Kirby's like perfect, most like Kirby-esque thing he ever did.
I gotta say, I think I like most of Jack Kirby's designs.
You and all of comicdom. I have to say, like,
oh well, true.
yeah.
All right, so no recommendations this week, but let us know what your favorite design character is.
Please do. Subscribe to our Patreon because you love us.
And also, we have a top 5 of the redheads, and we already alluded to it. It's good, juicy stuff.
That's true.
All right, till next time, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Phantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.